I think you got it. I think you got it there, champ. We're tuned in. We're locked and loaded. Hey, oh shit! I was gonna ask you before I hit record.
Fuck it.
What's the episode number of this one? Is this 33?
You just asked me. No. You literally just...
Did you give me an answer?
32.
Okay.
You remember that? You remember when I said 32?
Should I look it up? Should I go to the website? Should I go to wmdpodcast.com
What
/32?
a heartless plug.
Should I do that?
You fucking...
I think I should do. I think I should send family. I should remember the number 32. If I am friends and family of David living back in Kansas, then I love Marcus Allen. So I'm going to go to wmdpodcast.com /32.
Type in Marcus Allen. You'll get there eventually.
If you're a Colts fan, we're talking Edgerrin James.
Oh, God, we're going down this road?
No, we're not going to do that.
All the famous
Anyway,
32s.
wmdpodcast.com
If you're a fan of murder,
32.
wasn't OJ 32 too?
Yikes. Moving on. All right, Dave, what are we talking about?
We're talking about eggs, Dane. We're talking about huevos rancheros.
You're never going to believe that we discussed this episode before this started, and
we're trying something
I
new.
didn't come to the same conclusion that eggs was the topic of the day.
We're trying to be a little more professional. We've heard some feedback, and we're going to be a little more professional. I'm going to try to say, I'm going to mitigate the Fs. I'm not going to try to break my F count, even though I've already had 2. I'm very aware of it. I'm talking eggs. And why am I talking eggs, Dane?
That was going to be my
question.
question.
Eggs and faces. I'm talking eggs and faces. Look at all those California dreaming sons of bitches that moved out to Texas thinking, oh, I'm going to get to blow crap up and I'm going to not have to pay taxes because I'm an American and I'm living in a state that threatens to secede every 4 years. This is going to be crazy. And it's not that bad. It's going to be kind of a temperate zone. So like it'll get a little chilly down to 45. But if I've lived in the Bay Area, I'm used to that kind of stuff. And then they get
Coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco.
Are you going to San Francisco?
Wait, is that what that song's from? The part that I just quoted?
No.
Oh. Maybe
no, if you want to talk about
San
San Fran, you're talking poop in the streets.
I don't know if I heard that in a song or somebody said that.
Homies in the streets. But that is a little poor timing. Like you just exodused to escape the corona, and then you get slapped by a once in a lifetime storm. Now you're freezing your Jacobs off in Tejas.
And so you're just bringing up this point to make a point, right? You're not, or I mean, just to remark on the situation. Or are you making a deeper point, or should we jump in?
Can these sons of bitches catch a break? Like, I haven't had a meal in a restaurant in 20 years, it feels like. I'm going to go to Texas and get some barbecue. Oh, really? Snowstorm, mother! Deal with it.
See? You caught yourself and didn't say the word. I
bleeped myself.
Okay, well, I don't know what profound point David's trying to make here, but I do know this. That our pre-show conversation, he got eggs out of it, what you just heard, and we're going to launch into this episode and tell you what I got.
So you're going to go. Feel free to give some feedback on that, what really goes through the troubled mind of David.
All right, dropping in, see you on the other side. Weapons of Meme Destruction podcast episode 32 can be found at,
as previously discussed,
you may have heard, wmdpodcast.com /32. Podcast catchers, YouTube, like, subscribe, share.
If it casts pods, we're probably there.
Say, Dan, you're getting real lazy on the marketing end. This is why you're not growing. I have other reasons why we're not growing.
Yeah, there's blue pills for that thing.
First joke's already in, but hey, he caught himself from saying the F word in the...
No, I didn't. I said it twice.
I
said it twice, but I admitted that I said it twice. First step on the road to recovery is admitting you have a problem.
So our pre-show discussion, David came away from that of sympathy for Elon or Joe. I'll let him defend that later. End of the episode.
You're gaslighting me. You're gaslighting me.
I know, and I'm putting a cork in it right now.
Gaslighting doesn't exist.
We'll never get through. We'll never get through this.
We're going to do this.
Okay.
We're on a time crunch. Here we go.
So you may have guessed we're talking about the Texas winter crisis, the power grid crisis. And you've probably been getting pulled from all kinds of different directions about what you're supposed to think about this. It's either a good Democrat, a good Republican, or damn it, just a damn good American. Well, we're going to shed some light on it for you and see if maybe what we're supposed to believe about the situation from all sides maybe isn't the whole picture.
Dane, maybe they'd have to change their state motto. That everything's bigger in Texas to everything's bigger in Texas until it drops below 32 degrees, then it kind of shrinks a little bit. Just a little bit. It's not as grandiose as some people might think.
You know what? I think that really is. I think the audience is really.
I think so.
That's driven the point home. Okay. So, quick bullet points here. Quick couple little data points that we're gonna riff on later. You may have heard it was super cold in Texas last few days. February 8th to February 16th was pretty bad, and some drastic things happened to their energy grid, which put a lot of people out of power in freezing cold temperatures, and that's led to some deaths and a lot of uncomfortableness in the Lone Star State. But a couple data points, and they will become more relevant later. Over this period of February 8th to 16th, there was a 93% reduction in wind power. That's not overall Texas grid power, but just of the portion that comes from wind did not produce 93% of its normal capacity. Okay? In that same period, coal went up in production by 47%, and natural gas went up by 450%, 4.5 times. More energy was coming from natural gas than is expected of it in normal conditions. So after this, on one day in particular, gas fell from its 4.5 times to 3. It was still ramped up above its normal levels, but only 300% more than it usually provides. And with a 93% wind reduction, a 47% coal increase, and a 450 but 300 on one critical day, so we'll say the low end, 3 times as much coming from natural gas as normal, the grid almost made it through. But unfortunately,
the grid was like Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant. It almost beat that bear until it really didn't.
And that cold ass bear,
left
him for dead. So the grid almost made it, but damn it, it just couldn't. And to be fair to the other side, the pro-green energy side, who says, yeah, well, natural gas failed too, it did. There were some frozen gauges and some reduced line pressure of getting the gas to some of the natural gas facilities so that it could maintain that, 4.5 times what's normally asked of it. That's all. So if those gauges hadn't frozen, there was better line pressure. Maybe the deal could have been made up.
Cumulative 7 times what both of those things should have been doing at one time. 400% and 300%, right?
No. Those were both from the same second. Oh, don't get too much into the weeds. On the critical day where it actually went down,
when it failed,
it was only at 300%. So natural gas was up 300, coal was up 47, and wind was down 93%.
Eesh.
Now, but here's the key takeaway from that. I don't know what the breakdown is of the Texas energy grid. Maybe wind only contributes 10% to the overall grid. I don't know. But if it's a really low number like that, and you have a 93% reduction, then you're still having 6 or 7% shortfall on your overall energy production, right? And maybe natural gas ramping up and coal ramping up can make up that deficit, but maybe that deficit's just too large. Those are specific energy policy questions that need to be had. But you'll notice no part of this discussion has even gone there yet, because the discussion is purely from one side, your windmills froze, and from the other side, your natural gas gauges froze and you didn't insulate them properly.
First of all, can we just save the person that's drowning first? Can we just go and do that before they drown? Instead of telling, why you're drowning is because you went in without a life vest and you just had that Snickers 30 minutes ago and you're cramping up right now. It's really your fault. I'm gonna help you after I get done with this big long derision, and then you'll be better and we'll discuss it more. But I want you to know while you're there. Stop going underwater. You can't hear me when you go underwater. Wait. They drowned.
David, this is beautiful. So far, I'm putting people to sleep, and you're like driving the point home with a joke. I love it. They always told me I write and say too much. So, yeah, I mean, the frozen gauges and the low pressure and the uninsulated lines, yes, those are problems. We can acknowledge the problems, but even, I guess, before we have the discussion that I'm having, instead of this superficial wind turbines froze and didn't insulate the pipes, is the key point that David's
Can we just warm these guys up before we start telling them?
Can we do that?
Can we just give them a space heater or 3?
But now that you've really made the moral case, David, can I get back into the boring stuff?
Sure. I love naps.
So here's the other thing I wanted to say about the discussion and the lack thereof on this topic. There's a concept in economics, it's called opportunity costs. And if you are going to invest in something, whether it's more capital or a better trained labor force or whatever the case may be, whatever you're going to invest in, you only have a limited amount of resources. Scarcity is a real thing. And so maybe if you invest into one avenue, that means you don't have the money to invest in the other avenue. So a good manager of a company picks the right amount of investment in each one to cover as many bases as possible, but to have overall growth and to have a positive outcome, right? There's trade-offs. They acknowledge what the trade-offs are, and then they manage accordingly. Does that make sense? It's a simple enough concept.
It's like if you're dumb like me, it takes 1 bullet to kill a rabbit, but you're not going to eat that much off that rabbit. Whereas it might take 3 bullets to kill a moose, but you're going to eat forever off that moose. It's all about what you put in, what you put out, what you're willing to sacrifice to get certain things.
So, yes, of course, the mocking of Texas and of their quote unquote deregulated energy grid and their greedy, coal companies that want to maximize profits or whatever as the reason for why Texas wasn't prepared, right? That's one side of the argument. If that's the reason, I mean, okay, as far as that goes, I guess, if that's how you want to try to convince people, just tell them that they're evil and greedy, and then if they voted for them, they're stupid. Or you could understand that trade-offs are a real thing. And yeah, I guess technically you could completely retrofit the Texas grid to look like it looks in Maine, where they have these type of weather occurrences on sometimes a multi-annual basis. Versus Texas, who I think I saw one report, I don't know if this is confirmed, but had a weather event at least this cold back in 2011. So it's more than a once in a generation event, but 2011 was 9 years ago. So at least every generation, and I don't know how many events before that, but suffice it to say, this is a rare event in Texas.
Well, if that's the case, then you might as well slap on SPF 70 up in Washington. And I'm not talking DC, I'm talking Washington, like the north or the northwest, almost the northeast.
Where it's like raining 48
but just in case.
1,000 days a year.
Just in case. You don't want to get that melanoma. I hear it's a son of a bitch.
So, I mean, yeah, technically...
You could turn your car into an amphibious vehicle if you wanted to.
Yeah, and you could completely disregard one thing and say, well, we're going to invest all of our stuff over here, and that's all of that money that you would invest retrofitting Texas to look like Maine. That's money that you're not spending on, you're going to like this one, more green renewable energy. Maybe if there was more wind power out there and they still dropped 93%, they wouldn't have had the shortfall they did. Well, guess what? You don't have that money now to do it because you were retrofitting the whole system. That's an example of the way it could go. It doesn't mean that just because this meets your political narrative that it's a justified argument that doesn't analyze the situation.
Going back to the 2011, they should have seen it coming. Like, it was cold for a couple of days in 2011. That means you're gonna have a once in a lifetime event happen a couple of years down the road.
Once in a generation.
Well, if you're gonna call that a prediction, that's the shittiest weatherman I've ever heard of in my life. First of all, second of all, okay, let me make a prediction. Earth, sometime within the next 1,000,000 years, will get hit by another asteroid. It's fair. It's fair to say, is it not? Because I mean, we're in it to win it. We've been hit before. It's going to happen again. We're just now starting our Space Force. Is that I haven't seen a Space Commando yet. Have you?
No.
Have you seen a TIE fighter, an X-Wing?
I have not, but I think
Death Star?
I think we're woefully unprepared. Is that
the point
Elon,
if anyone's going to have it, it's Elon, and he's freezing his little giblets off right now. Let's get him a scarf and get us a goddamn death ray.
Well, David, that asteroid is, again, a perfect analogy because let's have another slightly more practical one than an asteroid hitting us. I'm not poo-pooing your analogy.
Well, I think concerns us all.
I think I'm being one of those doomers who just refuses to invest in asteroid defense. So let's just run a little hypothetical and see if that makes sense to us. So the total value, have you ever wondered how much money is there in the entire world? Well, maybe you're a curious little type.
When I was like 8,
yeah,
it's like I bet there's like $1 billion.
Well, I'm going to answer that for you. So, this is educational and judgmental and a little funny. So the total economy is valued at roughly, estimated, obviously, $88 trillion.
The world economy.
Everything in the entire world, $88 trillion. And you might say, well, Dane, if an asteroid hits Earth, we're extinct anyway, so that seems like the most important thing you could possibly ever invest in. You know what? We need to take every red cent out of that 188 trillion, or sorry, not 100, 88 trillion, 100% towards asteroid defense. We're going to research everything we need to. We're going to put all the resources into building whatever we need to. We're going to make on Earth 100% asteroid deflective.
I can tell you
88 trillion a year. What's going to go wrong with that plan,
I can tell you one thing. You might get a little hungry building all that asteroid defense when there's no money for frickin' corn on the cob. I can tell you that much right now. When you're throwing all this money at asteroid defense, you can't take that, trip to Fiji that you always wanted to make to warm up from your Tootsies being frozies.
Oh, you mean in order to cut costs on some asteroid defense to satisfy other needs like, I don't know,
food, water,
basic agriculture so we don't starve to death, some level of, facilitation of commerce between us, build the roads. I know you guys are real big fans of building roads. We need all of those little things. Those things cost money, right?
Building walls too. Don't forget that.
Okay, yeah. Walls, all kinds of stuff.
Building things. We just like to build things.
Social welfare programs for, people that, need some assistance. All of those things cost money.
You're going to need money for dynamite.
The good and the bad. War costs money. I think we can all agree that's a bad thing and that's money wasted. But, it's money spent, not being spent on asteroid defense just as much as welfare checks are. So, again,
pick your poison.
You now need to get into the analysis of trade-offs. Well, how much are we willing to siphon away from asteroid defense to solve global poverty or to have vast interconnected chains of commerce that within a couple days can make the most amazing invention that human beings have ever created, massive supercomputers, and our economy can churn those out on an annual basis. And we live in the lap of luxury for it based on, where we came out of the caves in 10,000 BC. So I would say we're doing a pretty decent job in terms of human survival. Now, are we 100% free from asteroids? No.
You bet your bottom dollar. But I hope Bruce Willis stays alive long enough.
Go to any legislative meeting as the #1 champion of asteroid defense
to let us know how to defend us against
see how
asteroids.
serious both sides, all people take you. So, trade-offs. They're a thing.
Isn't the big thing that they're saying nowadays? The left says that they weren't on the federal grid. So that's why this whole thing went down, is because they weren't connected with the other 49 states.
Yeah, basically, I want to say there's 3, and there might be a couple north that I'm not thinking of, but there's 3 big ones. There's the Eastern Energy Grid and the Western Energy Grid, and they basically converge somewhere around the Kansas, Nebraska area.
The flyover country.
Right, the place nobody cares about. But then you draw that line straight down and it breaks off over Texas because Texas removed itself from those grids to avoid some federal regulation. Now, again, one side of the argument will say, ha, ha, ha.
It goes back to that trade-off thing.
Right. One side says, ha, 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 you have this quote unquote deregulated grid, as if the state government of Texas like doesn't exist, as if they have nothing to do with the regulation at all. Oh, well, it's not just Texas, you stupid rube. It needs to be the entire federal government, because they are the ones that are filled with the responsible people who never do anything wrong.
Papa
and if
government.
they were regulated by the feds, none of this would have happened.
Papa government, help me.
Have you heard that meme flying around? I think so. Well, as we were discussing this, and that's a good pre-show non-recorded banter. David brought up a very intriguing point. And what was that, David?
Well, I asked a question. I don't really bring up a point. I just asked what happened? Were the levees federally regulated back in 2005 when Katrina hit? Which prompted an impromptu little study session, which yielded this.
Yeah, and I just want to say, this is the level of depth we want to put into this podcast. So that when we're saying things, we're not just trying to yank your chain or of course we want to convince you to our worldview, but we just want to give you data points to make up your own mind as to whether or not the way we see the world is a valid way. So if the argument is being run and regulated by the feds,
nothing bad can happen.
Is the panacea. Yeah, that fixes everything. As long as the people in Washington, the smartest people that this species has ever been able to put into office, if they can't figure it out, then you were going to have a bad time. Is that generally the argument?
Generally. I believe they're holding Texas's feet to the proverbial fire, not the actual fire, which I'm sure they'd love to have right now.
Well, as David brought up, and we had to look up to make sure, because I had always heard this too, the dam or the levees, the levees around New Orleans for Hurricane Katrina were run, operated from a management point of view by the federal government, not by the state of Louisiana or even the city of New Orleans. And I was like, I've always heard that, and that would be a good point for our side, but I don't know how true it is. Well,
most cursory Google search.
Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, because it's as bad and worse than you think. So, and I'm quoting from another source. So, the heavy flooding caused by Hurricane Betsy in 1965 brought concerns regarding flooding from hurricanes to the forefront. So, 1965, 40 years before Katrina, something bad happened, hurricane related, in New Orleans. Congress removed...
We should make that not happen again.
Congress removed responsibility from the state and mandated that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have sole authority over the design and construction of the New Orleans area flood protection, although local cooperation was stipulated. Now they said, hey, this is a local concern for New Orleans. You've had hurricanes hit you before, but here's what we're going to do. We, the feds, are going to step in, and we're going to have sole authority over making sure that if this happens again, you're protected. Got it? Got it, state of Louisiana? We're the responsible ones. Let's read on.
I'm bated breath over here.
Everything that I just read to you was spelled out in the Flood Control Act of 1965. So it looks to me like Hurricane Betsy caused a problem. Congress acted, right? We got some bipartisan support, and Congress made things happen, not like that terrible gridlock we have today. In 1965, 40 years later, 40, not 14, not 4, 40. 40 years later, when Katrina struck in 2005, the flood protection, so remember that thing, the federal government with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers?
Don't you worry about this. We're on it.
It was between, got estimates. We don't know exactly. We didn't measure it to the centimeter. It was between 60 and 90% incomplete. No, I'm sorry. I said that backward. Yes. 60 and 90% complete. So it's either 40% incomplete, almost half, or it's almost 10% incomplete.
Look, hey, Timmy, how'd you do on your test today? Well, Dad, I got 60 to 90%. What? Timmy, are you messing with me right now? Do you not like Daddy? No, Dad. I got 60 to 90%. You, Timmy, either passed or failed. Those are two very large margins that you just threw out there. You either did something completely or you totally didn't do it at all. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Did New Orleans pass or fail, Dane?
Well, we're almost there. So 40 years to get between 60 and 90% done. And you're never going to guess what that 1965 timeline was to get this all done. You might think, man, 40 years, they were really late. Well, they estimated, back when they started the project, that it was going to be done in 13 years. And you know when it was actually scheduled to be done at the end, David?
Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for it.
2015.
So
10 years after Katrina.
Even if they would have been right on time, they'd have still missed it by 10 years.
So Congress literally says to the citizens of New Orleans, we're going to take your safety 100% in our hands, and we're going to get it done in 13 years. Could a bad hurricane hit you in 13 years?
Sure.
Yeah, probably. That's why we're rushing.
That's the best we can do.
We're going to get it done in 13 years. And don't you worry, we got it. We're 100% have your safety in our hands. And in
the best SpongeBob voice that I can do, 50 years later.
40 years, but who's counting?
It's 50 years later now, but fuck it.
40 years. And again, as the timeline was going, they thought, we've had to modify this.
They would have been done 50 years later because it got hit 40 years later. They would have been done 50 years later by their run.
Right, yeah. Suffice it to say, after the 13-year mark, they probably looked at each other in a meeting or two and they're like, I think we're going to miss that deadline, Chuck.
They don't care. They're partying. They're boozing down there. They're playing. They're showing each other's boobies
Chuck says, no worries.
Fat Tuesday.
No worries, Tom. We'll just push it out another couple of years, all the way to eventually 2015.
What do you want? Like 1 or 2? You want to make it 15 years? No, let's try 40. Let's see what happens. See if they react. Give them 40 on a soft palate, and then if they come back hard, we'll give them 20.
So I hope that after that story, dear listener, you look at David and I when somebody says, well, the federal government would have fixed this. The federal government would have anticipated everything, and everything would have been perfectly fine. We hope you can pardon our skepticism.
Calling bullshit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Little drill bit.
So, and that kind of gets us into, and like manna from heaven. David and I, we couldn't plan this out any better if we wanted to. So we're having the discussion early this last week, and we're coming to the point about how everything's being missed. And David kind of alluded to that in the beginning with his heaping bowl of foreshadowing. When he's like, nice. Wait a minute, shouldn't the first response be these people need help, let's go help them? And that if we were really a country of unity coming together, right? Hashtag Joe Biden, back to normalcy.
Just a hashtag.
If we were really coming together, I mean, our only response would be, let's go help.
Let's get them out of there. Let's make sure that they're warm. Let's make sure that they're Americans and they're fed and they're taken care of. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a red state or blue state, you're an American, damn it.
Everything that I have probably snoozingly brought up in this episode about really getting into the weeds of the data of what happened and what do we do when we move forward, all of that comes secondary to, is everybody okay? Right? But you'll notice that I would be willing to bet the future of this podcast on the statement I'm about ready to make right here, David.
We've got like a whole 20 subscribers on YouTube. You don't want to throw those away.
I'm not going to put a percentage on it and say that 20% or 30% of the independent media, so not legacy like CNN, Fox, sure. New York Times, but we're talking everything from the Joe Rogans to the Harvard Review podcast to Howard Stern or something like that. The end of that media, right? I'll bet you is a very small portion of it that is even having that be the focal point of the discussion of, okay, we're going to help them first. We'll figure out what happened later and we'll try to make sure it doesn't happen again, but we're going to help them first.
Throw the damn lifesaver. Throw the damn life.
And what I'm saying is that's what we're trying to provide clarity to the conversation so that the important stuff does get talked about.
First, throw the lifesaver so they have some nice breath when you save their life by throwing them the life vest that prevents them from drowning.
And the point I was making about manna from heaven is what fell into our lap that everybody's going to immediately relate to and know about, even if they've been living under a rock.
How many times,
Ted Cruz thing?
How many times has Ted Cruz come in to save the day? 1,000 times, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure he hangs a coat or hangs a cape up in his closet.
The proverbial American version of
and fixes everything immediately.
Of Mr. Bean.
Yeah,
he's like literally our American version of Mr. Bean.
First point on that, and the reason why I call it manna from heaven is it's a cultural hotspot that everybody's focused on while they're not talking about people being hurt, and they're having a completely surface level discussion that not only is not focusing on helping people, but even the sloppy, superficial way it's being done from both sides, they're not even getting to the data that we shared on this episode and even talking about the real fundamental issues if your true concern was, let's not let this happen again. Not even that discussion is being had. Just a couple things to say about the Ted Cruz as the canary in the coal mine for where our discourse is in this country today. First of all, like, what's Ted Cruz supposed to do? David was kind of getting to this with his point about, like, oh yeah, he flies down there and fixes everything all the time. Don't you know that, you stupid rube? Like, back in the real world, what's he supposed to do? Just go stand down there in solidarity and be like, you guys are freezing. I'm going to freeze with you.
Hold on. Let me get down there with you in the muck and the buck.
What? Now, that's going to sound very cold and callous, but we're gonna elaborate on this point.
First of all, actually, going back to my point about him being Mr. Bean, he's doing America a favor by getting the hell out of here so we can fix this thing without him gumming up the works.
Yeah.
How about that? He's doing us a favor. Thank you for going
because he's on one of the irresponsible, incompetent side,
Get
right?
out of here, you dumbass.
Yeah, all you're going to do is mess it up.
Yeah, you big dumb dummy.
That's a good point. I didn't think about it like that.
I didn't either until that second.
That's very nicely done.
We should be thanking.
But here's we're not saying that Ted Cruz should have left to Cancun to go, chill in sunny Mexico while his state freezes.
The optics look pretty poor.
The optics are terrible. The difference in optics between him and he needs to fire his team and hire AOCs, not from a political standpoint, but from a purely marketing standpoint.
Right.
Because then what did she do? Right? She went on her social media, raised $1 million, and now it looks like AOC is blue and she's from a blue state. She doesn't care that it's a red state. She's willing to be a good American, jump in and help them out. And you might say, Dane, isn't that what you just said you wanted this whole conversation to be? You want it to be people helping people out? And I would say yes.
And actually,
and it is.
We applaud that action. We applaud the action of the $1 million being given to
Absolutely. And I'm not even going to do the next step that happens from both sides. I'm not even going to try to get in her brain and say, well, she only did it for cynical political purposes. Right. She doesn't really care about them. She's doing it for the show. It's like, breaking ground with the golden shovel. Like, the CEO's not building the building, that kind of thing. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm just going to assume the best and assume that she did it for all the right reasons to help out and do exactly what we were hoping people would do in this situation. However, her side of the ledger, and again, this is not me blaming her for what other people do. What I'm saying is the people having the discourse from her side of the ledger are using her by saying exactly that. Oh, she doesn't care that it's a red state, i.e., she's better than Trump and everybody else that's affiliated with Republicans. And she's doing the right thing by helping everybody out. And there's not even any consideration about other reasons why she might. I mean, is that a valid discussion to be had? I think it's fair. Why not have the discussion? Everybody on all sides, regardless of what they think her motives are, can say, you know what? The key takeaway is you helped out and good for you. And thank you.
And that should be all that you did it for.
And that's what we're talking. Exactly.
That's all we need. The motives behind it don't merit any thought, just that the action was done.
So if you want to use that as an argument, use that as your argument. But if you don't, I question your motives about why you're using it as your argument. And here's the other thing. Ted Cruz is a federal politician. He's not a Texas state legislator. He has no control over the policy of the Texas state energy grid. Remember that whole argument you just made about it's not federally regulated? Yeah, that means it's kind of outside of Ted Cruz's sphere.
And
so not only can he not do anything over the regulating of the Texas energy grid, he has no policy position in Texas to do it. He's not on the board of the natural gas company or the coal company or the wind company.
He'd just be another chef in the kitchen. And there's already plenty of chefs in the kitchen.
He would be, and I venture to say the people propping up AOC would have to say that if Ted Cruz went down there and pitched in, started shoveling sidewalks or whatever and getting a photo op, I'm pretty sure that they would, give him the same benefit of the doubt we just gave AOC and said he's doing it to be a roll up his sleeves kind of guy.
So he said, fuck it, I'm heading to Fiji.
Right. So again, if you're going to assume that about him doing that, tit for tat on the person on your side of the ledger. And then, so, the point about the whole thing being is the Ted Cruz thing is a microcosm of the macro problem that we identified earlier. And the macro problem is this idea that we have to be on separate teams. We have to hate each other's guts no matter what. Not only not no matter what, because we refuse to research ourselves, but we even go that one step further in terms of dereliction of duty. And I'm talking about as the American people and holding our representatives to account. Is not only do we not research to figure out what we should think about X, Y, or Z, but then we then go the extra step of letting those people speak for us and let their opinions and their rhetoric, which is all just driven on political power jockeying, we're letting their conclusions dictate our conclusions.
Dane, I wouldn't let Nancy Pelosi drive me to church on Sunday, let alone would I want her to tell me how I should live my life. And can we track back to the asteroid thing and Elon Musk and getting him a scarf? How long did it take Elon Musk to start his own space program?
I guess the answer to my question was yes, right?
Yes. Oh, I thought it was rhetorical. I didn't know that it required an actual answer.
I just wanted, I had to get a dig in there.
How long did it take for Elon Musk to come up with a rocket that shot up to the space station, and then not only did that, but then also came back down and landed in the same spot that it took off from?
Listen, David, I've seen
5 years.
I've seen some of Elon's rockets blow up on the pad. Okay.
Yeah. Was there anybody?
He's not
in there?
perfect.
Was there anybody in there?
He's not perfect, David.
And number one, how many years did it take us to get to the fucking moon? I think Elon's the acceleration. So
how many times have we been back since we got there? So trade-offs? No,
because it was all faked anyway, right? Because the Earth is flat and all that good stuff, and that's just a plate. It's just a plate with a little backlighting to it. Yeah. Anyway. Moving on, I think that privatization should take over for the asteroid thing so we don't have to invest all the world's economy into it. Oh. I don't know if you can tell.
Oh, wait a minute.
I'm a little concerned about this asteroid thing.
Or are you saying maybe we don't even have to say that the private would do it better. We just have to say they'd get it done.
Let the private market do it more cost effective and do it better than the government probably would have.
No, they would get it done at least 10 years before the asteroid.
That's what I'm saying. More effectively, much more price point efficient.
The last rivet in the asteroid defense system would go into it about 30 seconds before the asteroid.
Oh, shit!
Hey, we got it done though, baby.
By God, I don't care. As long as you beat the shot clock.
Oh, you mean you don't want a private company to tell you, yeah, it'll take 13 years and 14 or 40 years later, they say we got 10 more to go?
Imagine that you order something from Amazon and they go, all right, you might get that in 13 to 40 years. Like, thanks. That EpiPen that would save my life. I could really use it now, but I guess I could wait the 13 to 40 years. I don't really have much of an option.
David, this is beautiful.
Oh, well. And then
it was
again,
a good run.
Then again, we hope, all the jokes aside, we hope that if you're a listener in Texas or if you know anybody in Texas, our hearts go out to you. We hope you stay safe. Hopefully everything gets resolved.
Yes.
Yes. Very quickly.
As a matter of fact, we hope that if anybody in Texas happens to hear this at a relevant time period, that you're not already warmed back up and everything's fine again, that, you get a laugh out of this to lighten the mood a little bit. We hope you get out of this soon.
Right. So where can they find?
They can find this at wmbpodcast.com/32. Come to the homepage, jump on that email list, but check us out on all other platforms as well. We have Instagram, Twitter, that email list I mentioned. You can find us on your podcast catchers, watch videos on YouTube. Share us with every friend and family you have, friend and family member you have on every platform that they like to get their content
and if you
on.
don't like us, share us with your enemies.
Yeah.
Make your enemies listen to us.
Yeah, because
waste some of their time.
maybe we'll make them dumber, like as dumb as us, and then they'll never figure
and
nothing
then they'll
out.
never vote against you again.
Yes.
Yeah. So until next week.
Thanks for stopping by.
Bye, Mimi.
See you soon.